be cutting their ties with longtime manager Bud Black.
CBS Sports Colorado Romy Bean joining us now. So, Romy, this came as a surprise to many.
You know, I think this was a matter of when, not if, at this point, with the way the season was going. On to their third consecutive 100-loss season, and this one was atrocious. 7-33. They're on pace to have one of the worst seasons in MLB history. You know, 7th consecutive losing season. Bud Black, a great man. Players were really upset to see him go, but this was the change that had to be made. You got to start somewhere, and it starts with the manager.
So it wasn't necessarily a surprise. It was kind of, you know, waiting to see.
Yeah, I think this was a matter of time with the way the season was going.
Okay. So where do you think the team goes from here, and do you think there's changes on the horizon even further?
Well, there has to be more changes on the horizon, and to be honest, I woke up this morning and I was surprised that Bill Schmidt still had a job. This roster is not a big league roster, and it starts and ends with him. In a lot of ways, Bud Black was the fall guy. Look, this team, they have the worst ERA in baseball. They have the 3rd worst batting average. They have the 2nd fewest runs. They have a minus 128 run differential. To give you perspective of how bad that is, it's 59 runs worse than the next closest team. There are so many pieces of this where this system is very broken. This is going to take a long time to fix. This is not a quick fix, but they're going to have to make a lot of changes, and I think we're going to see a lot of changes because there's simply no quick fix.
Yeah, thinking about that, we were talking a little bit in the newsroom too. You know, the players have to show up too.
Yeah.
I mean, they really have to show up for themselves and not just be throwing the ball all around and missing it.
Absolutely. The players have to perform, and they have not been performing. On the same token, it's really hard. You play 162 games to be consistently losing. Losing in games 21-0. This was like a football score we saw on Saturday night. So maybe this does provide some sort of a spark for them. You know, it's one of those things. Nikola Jokic said it when they got rid of Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. He said ownership kind of sent a message, and it seems like they've gotten the result they wanted. Sometimes you have to make these big changes in sports, and this was overdue.
Yeah, it was. We've been thinking about it for a while now. Of course, you and Eric had some conversations about this earlier. The state of the Rockies after Bud Black's exit. You can see that on our stream. That is tonight at 8 o'clock.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk Nuggets. They had a rough start to the first quarter, and Thunder took once again, series is tied at 2-2. Do you think the Nuggets have a chance taking down the #1 seed?
First of all, we just talk about the beginning of the game. That was one of the most atrocious things I've ever seen in my life. They scored 8 points in the first quarter. That's a franchise low. I don't even think it was basketball in the first quarter. The quick turnaround certainly was a big factor for them as well. But this was a game the Nuggets had the Thunder on the ropes in the 3rd and the start of the 4th. And then they just they ran out of gas. I think if they lose this series, this is the game that you look back and you say, that's the one that got away. But at the same time, the rest, it's a best of 3 now. And the Nuggets really like their chances in a best of 3. They know what it's like. They have that playoff experience. This is going to be a gritty, nasty series, which is kind of how they described it last night in the locker room. And they like that. They thrive, and I think they are the better team in those situations. It's going to be a fight. There's no easy way, but you got to make your shots. That's the biggest thing we saw last night. They didn't. They shot 31%. You got to make your shots, but they feel good about their chances.
Yeah, we feel good about our chances, right? They're not out of it by no means.
By no means.
And that's important to point out.
Not at all.
Thank you, Romy. We appreciate your time. A new tool